Kevin looked thoughtfully at the phone lying on the coffee table. The thoughts in his head were a mess. For weeks now he had sensed something was wrong. Megan had changed. Her closed-mindedness, sharp retorts, and cold indifference to his feelings were literally tearing their marriage apart. But he couldn't understand the reason why. The phone on the table was hers. Once again she had forgotten it in the morning, rushing to work. Kevin reached out slowly but stopped short of reaching for it. He knew it was wrong. Invade her personal space? Peeking in? It was beneath his dignity. But the doubts growing inside almost destroyed all those principles. If the phone had answers, shouldn't he recognize them? Wasn't it his right to understand what was ruining their lives? He sat for a long time, staring at the screen, which idly glowed black like the unknown itself. He wanted an explanation. He wanted to know why his wife, the one he loved, had become so distant. Why her every word sounded like a shard of glass poisoning his heart. Maybe there were answers there. Messages, notes, pictures, anything that could shed light on her change. But what would he do if he found something horrible in there? If his worst suspicions turn out to be true? Will he be able to cope with that knowledge? Or would it be the final straw that destroyed what was left of their family? Kevin exhaled, ran a hand through his hair, and leaned back against the back of the couch. He wasn't sure if he was ready for the truth. But the weight of that not knowing was weighing on him every minute. He picked up his phone and froze for a moment, staring at the screen. His fingers trembled, but at the last moment he set the device aside. I'm not going to be that person, he thought, getting up from the couch. I have to find another way to understand her. Maybe just talk. Or give myself a break. It was then that the thought of Lily occurred to him. She was his neighbor who lived across the street. Lily always radiated friendliness, her smile able to dispel even the darkest of thoughts. Working as an interior designer, she had a knack for finding beauty in the little things, and she did it with an ease that charmed those around her. They occasionally crossed paths in the parking lot or exchanged a few words on the street, and each time they talked, Kevin felt a sense of calm. He decided not to delay and dialed her number. After a short beep, Lily answered. Hi, Kevin. Her voice sounded warm as always. Hi, Lily, he began, trying to sound casual. I had an idea. Maybe you could join me for dinner? Just to relax, to chat. There was a short pause on the other end of the line and Kevin held his breath. Sounds great, she finally answered. I'm free tonight. Where should we meet? He named a restaurant by the river that he'd wanted to visit for a long time. Lily agreed and Kevin could hear the joy in her voice. It was the first time in a long time that he felt he had done something for himself. He remembered her smile, the ease with which she always found words of encouragement. She was the complete opposite of the tense and heavy atmosphere that prevailed in his house. Maybe dinner with her and simple, casual conversation would help him distract himself, reset his thoughts. Maybe then he could find the strength to deal with what was going on in his life. A few hours later, Kevin was already standing in front of the mirror in his bedroom, trying to tidy himself up. He had chosen a casual but neat outfit, jeans and a light shirt he hadn't worn in a while. He wanted to feel refreshed this evening. As he buttoned the last button, he noticed his reflection tired, with deep lines on his face that said more than he was willing to admit. I deserve at least one normal evening, he thought, taking a deep breath. When he left the house, the evening sun was casting a soft glow on the street. Lily was already waiting in the driveway of her house, dressed in a light dress that emphasized her sophistication but didn't seem too dressy. She smiled when she saw Kevin and took a step toward him. You're just in time, she said with a slight smile. I thought I'd gotten here too early. I couldn't keep you waiting, he replied, opening the car door in front of her. Tonight had to be perfect. The restaurant he had chosen was not far from the river. The place was famous for its atmosphere, soft lights, muted sounds of jazz and a view of the water that reflected the last rays of the sun. As they stepped inside, Kevin felt the tension of the last weeks gradually recede. It was a different world, free of worries and resentments. Lily looked like she fit in perfectly with the atmosphere. She was looking at the interior with interest, her eyes sparkling in the soft light of the lamps. This place is wonderful, she said, sitting down at a table by the window. Do you come here often? Honestly, no, Kevin admitted. I've wanted to for a long time, but I just haven't found the time. I guess I just needed the right excuse. Lily laughed, and her laugh, warm and sincere, filled the space around her. Kevin caught himself thinking that for the first time in a long time he wasn't smiling strangely, but genuinely. They placed their order and quickly delved into conversation. Lily talked about her work as an interior designer, sharing funny incidents with her clients. Kevin caught every word she said, gradually feeling his inner tension melt away. He didn't have to prove anything, didn't have to hide anything. This evening was light and free, like a breath of fresh air. But their dinner was interrupted by a sudden explosion of rage. Kevin heard rumbling, hurried footsteps behind them, as if someone couldn't wait to barge in on their perfect moment. Then came a voice full of rage, shattering the thin fabric of his calm. "Are you serious, Kevin?" It rang out behind him. He froze, feeling a chill run down his spine. Lily turned her head in surprise, and Kevin already knew whose voice it was. His wife Megan stood in front of their table, her face contorted with anger, her eyes burning with accusation. In the silence of the restaurant, her words sounded especially loud, attracting the attention of the others. "Do you think this is normal?" Megan continued, taking a step closer. "Sitting here with someone else when our marriage is falling apart. Is this how you solve our problems?" Lily glanced at Kevin, clearly taken aback, but he didn't have time to explain. The restaurant patrons began to turn around, some already pulling out their phones to record what was happening. "Megan," Kevin began, trying to speak calmly. "It's not what you think. It's not what I think?" Her voice got even louder. "You're sitting with her, at our favorite table, at the very restaurant we went to for our anniversaries. And you're telling me that's not what I think? You're just pathetic." Lily stood up, looking uncomfortable. "Maybe I should leave," she started, but Megan turned sharply toward her. "Oh, you don't have to pretend that you're here by accident," Megan said wryly. "You knew exactly what you were doing." Kevin sat motionless as if he were stuck to the chair. Megan's words had torn through the thin shell of calm he'd worked so hard to create. Lily stood nearby, her face a mixture of surprise and discomfort. She clearly hadn't expected this turn of events. "Megan, can you stop yelling?" He tried, his voice low but trembling. "We're not at home, there are people here." "Oh, and now you care about people?" Her sarcasm was almost palpable. "You didn't care about people when you invited her here." The restaurant patrons began to whisper. Some were looking toward their table, others pretended not to notice, but there was curiosity in their gazes. Kevin felt his face heat up. This was not the evening he had envisioned just an hour ago. Lily, trying not to make things worse, stepped back, gathering her things. "Maybe we should postpone dinner," she suggested in a soft voice, avoiding a direct look from Megan. "Yes, Lily, put it off," Megan spat out. "You better put it away from my husband." Her words were filled with venom, and Kevin felt his patience begin to wear thin. He stood up, trying to look calm, but inside he was seething. "Enough," he said firmly. "We can talk at home. This isn't the place or the time." Megan took a step closer, her face flushed and her voice lower, almost threateningly quiet. "At home? You suddenly feel like talking at home? Maybe you should have thought of that before you brought her here." Lily looked at Kevin, her eyes full of apology, as if she felt guilty for everything that was going on. "Kevin, I'm really sorry," she began. "I didn't mean to cause any trouble." Kevin raised his hand to stop her. "Lily, it's not your fault. It's not your fault." "It's not her fault?" Megan sarcastically interjected. "Of course it wasn't her fault. She just happened to be there, didn't she?" At that moment their conversation was interrupted by the appearance of the restaurant manager, who tried to intervene delicately. "I apologize," he said politely, but his voice was strained. "It's our rule to maintain a calm environment for all guests." Megan gave him a look that made the manager take a step back, but he didn't leave. "Quiet?" she asked with a nervous laugh. "Of course. Just very calm when your husband is sitting with another woman at the table where you were celebrating your anniversary." Kevin realized the situation was getting out of hand. He turned to Lily, his voice softening. "Please understand me. You don't have to feel guilty. Just let me handle this, okay?" Lily nodded, clearly relieved that she didn't have to be a part of this drama. "I'm going to go," she said quietly. "I hope you find a way to settle this." She turned around and headed for the exit, her steps light, but she could feel the tension in her back. Kevin watched her until the restaurant door closed behind her. "Fine," Megan said, crossing her arms over her chest. "Go get her." "That's enough, Megan," Kevin said firmly. "We both know this isn't about Lily." "What is it about?" she interrupted sharply. "Was it about how you decided to humiliate me? Or the way you got bored?" Kevin inhaled deeply, trying to find words that wouldn't inflame her anger any further. "It's about us," he said calmly. "About something that's been wrong for a long time." Megan was silent, her chest heaving. She stared at him as if trying to find some sincerity in his eyes. "I don't want to talk here," Kevin added. "If you're ready, we'll talk at home." She hesitated but finally nodded. "Okay," she whispered, but her tone was still firm. Only because I want to hear what you're going to say. They walked out of the restaurant together, leaving the stares of curious guests behind them. Kevin had a feeling that this conversation would be a turning point, but was he prepared for what would follow? Kevin and Megan stood across from each other on the quiet street in front of the restaurant. Lily had already left, leaving the two of them to sort out their tangle of contradictions. The air was thick with tension, as if the whole world had frozen, waiting for their next move. Megan looked at Kevin, her gaze a mixture of anger, annoyance, and something else he couldn't immediately understand. So are you going to be quiet? Her voice broke the lingering silence. Or are you going to explain what this circus is all about? Kevin sighed heavily, looking away for a moment. Everything was boiling inside him. He'd been preparing for this conversation for a long time, but he couldn't imagine it happening like this, in the middle of the street, with all these emotions running high. He looked at Megan again, trying to find a glimmer of the woman he'd once known in her face. We both know this isn't a circus, he said quietly but firmly. And this isn't about Lily. Oh, of course it is, she grinned with bitter sarcasm. It's not about her, but you're sitting with her at the very restaurant we went to together. Kevin took a step closer, his eyes narrowing and his voice a little louder. Megan, that's enough. You're not the one who should be asking questions right now, I am. Her face twitched and she seemed to want to object, but Kevin continued. I've been trying to figure out what's going on with you. Your late returns, your work meetings, your coldness. And I chalked it all up to fatigue, stress. His voice trailed off, but he pulled himself together. But I was a fool. What are you trying to accuse me of? She began, but Kevin interrupted her, no longer holding back his emotions. Shut up, Megan. His voice echoed off the restaurant wall. You don't know what it's like to sit at home waiting for you, hoping things will work out. And then accidentally seeing a message pop up on your phone. Megan froze. Her face paled, but she quickly pulled herself together. What was the message? She asked, trying to speak calmly, but her voice gave her away. Kevin slowly pulled his phone out of his pocket and opened the screen picture he took then. He held it up so she could see the text. Can't wait to meet you. Same hotel. Miss you, darling, he quoted, his voice cold and cutting. Signed, Tom. Megan stood motionless, her eyes staring at the phone screen, but she didn't utter a word. What do you say now? Is it just a coworker? Kevin was no longer trying to hide his irritation. You mentioned his name. Tom from the office. I thought he was someone you worked with. Turns out he's someone you sleep with behind my back. Enough, she shouted, taking a step back. Passers-by began to turn around, some even stopped to see what was going on. Megan noticed this and, lowering her voice, took a step closer to him. Let's not talk about this here, she hissed, her face burning with emotion. You don't understand. Oh, I understand perfectly well. Kevin wasn't going to stop. I realize that you've been lying to me all these months. And that I've been trying to save what you destroyed a long time ago. Megan couldn't take it anymore. Her eyes filled with tears, but she quickly looked away, not letting them fall. It's not as easy as you think, she said, her voice filled with pain. Really? Kevin took a step closer. Then explain it to me. Explain why, instead of talking to me, you went to someone else. Why you let everything fall apart without even giving us a chance. Megan was silent. She raised her head, her gaze both frightened and furious. You wouldn't understand, she whispered. Then make me understand. Kevin shouted, his voice louder than he had intended. Megan shook her head slowly, her lips trembling. I can't. Kevin turned away. He could feel the anger and frustration mixing inside him like a dark, churning sea. You know, Megan, he said, his voice quieter again, but there was metal in it. I wasn't going to spill it all out today. I just wanted to think about it for a while. But you seem to have made up your mind for me. She stared at him as if trying to figure out what he was going to say next. So here's how it's going to be, he continued. We'll talk at home. But it's not the conversation I was hoping to have. Megan nodded, her face blank as if she already knew she'd lost this battle. Kevin took a step back, glancing around the restaurant, which now seemed foreign and cold to him. I'll wait for you at home, he said, turning away. And with those words he walked away, leaving Megan standing alone on the lighted street, surrounded by curious stares. When Kevin returned home after their tense scene at the restaurant, the house greeted him with silence. He closed the door behind him, threw his jacket on the nearest chair, and sank down on the couch, feeling the tension of the evening finally begin to let go. But with it came another emotion, emptiness. He knew this was just the beginning. Megan wasn't the type to just accept it. Her homecoming came an hour later. She walked in, slamming the door, and stopped in the hallway, casting him a look full of fatigue and anger. "Are you really going to act like this?" she began, not waiting for an answer. "Turn everything into a public circus?" Kevin slowly raised his head. "You did this to yourself, Megan." His voice was quiet but firm. "I didn't choose for it to come out like this." She exhaled sharply. "You think it's that simple?" Her voice was filled with bitterness. "You have no idea what I've been going through." "Then explain it," he suddenly shouted, standing up. "Explain what made you lie to me, going out at night and sleeping with this Tom. And don't give me the excuse of stress or work." Megan fell silent. Her hands shook as she wrapped her arms around his shoulders, as if trying to protect herself from his words. "I don't know," she finally whispered, her voice shaking. Kevin closed his eyes, trying to suppress the waves of rage that were rising in him again. "Is that all you have to say? After all these months?" She turned and headed for the bedroom, tossing over her shoulder. "I need to think." The next morning, Megan awoke to the annoying sound of notifications on her phone. Half asleep, she reached out but sat up abruptly on the bed when she saw the screen. Over 100 notifications, messages, calls, social media mentions. Her heart clenched. Something wasn't right. She opened the first message from a coworker. "Megan, what's going on? Are you okay?" Next, "Have you seen this video? Everyone's talking about it." "Video?" she muttered, scrolling through the messages until she found the link. Clicking on it, Megan felt her face go pale. The phone screen unfolded the exact moment from the restaurant. Kevin, her accusations and sarcastic remarks. The camera caught every moment, from her angry expression to the gestures she used to poke Kevin and mention Lily. But worst of all, users mercilessly trashed her in the comments. What a tantrum. Another drama queen. Even if her husband cheated, that's no reason to act like this. Toxic woman. Poor guy, I hope he divorces her. Megan felt the ground go from under her feet. She tried to calm down, but her hands were shaking. Her fingers involuntarily flipped through the comments, each one like a blow under the breath. Even people who didn't know her weren't spared. The day at the office started out worse than she expected. As soon as Megan walked in, she was met with silence. Usually coworkers said hello, shared morning stories, but today was different. People avoided her gaze, stepping aside as if afraid to speak. She walked over to her desk, trying to remain calm. Turning on her computer, she noticed several emails marked urgent. One of them was from Human Resources. It requested a meeting with the director at 2 p.m. She tried to avoid it until the appointed time. Before the appointed time, everyone was trying to avoid her. Even those who had always supported her now looked at her with suspicion or pity. When the clock struck 2, Megan made her way to the principal's office, her footsteps echoing in the empty hallway. "Sit down, Megan," the principal said dryly, not looking at her. She sank down on the edge of the chair, feeling her back break out in a cold sweat. "We've become aware of a recent incident," he began, opening a folder on his desk. "The video you are featured in has gone viral. We have received numerous complaints from customers and even employees." "It was a personal situation," Megan hastened to explain. "Nothing to do with work." The director glanced at her, his expression cold. "There is a clause in the terms of your contract about preserving your professional reputation. Your behavior, unfortunately, has already affected our image." Those words hit her like a thunderbolt. "We have to offer you a choice. Either you resign or we will initiate disciplinary proceedings, which will most likely result in your dismissal." Megan felt the cold fingers of fear clutching her throat. She couldn't respond. Couldn't even breathe. Hours later, she stood in the parking lot with a box of her belongings. None of her coworkers came out to see her off. She tried calling a few friends, but no one answered. Megan felt the loneliness overwhelming her more and more. She drove home, but even within her own four walls, she couldn't find peace. Her phone kept ringing with notifications, but she didn't look at it anymore. She closed the curtains, turned off the lights, and just sat on the couch. Everything she had built over the past years had crumbled in a matter of days. Quietly, barely audible, Megan burst into tears, tucking herself into the pillow. It had been weeks since the conflict with Megan had been made public. For Kevin, those days had been both liberating and exhausting. Breaking up with Megan was now inevitable, but instead of relief, he felt empty. His life no longer resembled his old life. The silence in the house pressed on him more than her screams. He rarely socialized with anyone he knew. Lily was the only exception. After that dinner at the restaurant, she had texted him unobtrusively, sometimes calling him, wondering how he was doing. Kevin sensed that she cared, but Lily remained careful not to try to cross any boundaries that might make their communication awkward. That was exactly what had bought him off. One evening, sitting at home in the semi-darkness, Kevin heard a notification on his phone. It was a message from Lily. "Hi. We're having a little fair at the park today. I think you should get out of the house and unwind. Want some company?" Kevin hesitated. He usually turned down any invitation, but something about this offer felt right to him. He really needed to get out of the musty atmosphere of his walls. The fair was bustling with colorful tents, children's laughter, and the smell of fresh waffles and caramel filling the air. Lily was already waiting for him at the entrance, dressed in a light-colored sweater and jeans. Her simplicity, without artificial mannerisms or pretension, was exactly what Kevin was missing right now. "I'm glad you came after all," she smiled, handing him the hot coffee she'd bought for him. "Thank you," he replied, smiling back, though he found it hard to smile. Lily felt his inner struggle and touched his arm lightly. "You're just resting tonight, no more thinking," she said. "Consider it a prerequisite." Her light tone made Kevin relax. They started walking, stopping at each stall where handmade jewelry, candy, and books were sold. Lily looked at the little things with delight, making jokes about the ridiculous souvenirs. Kevin watched her, feeling his gloomy mood begin to dissipate. "Do you always find joy in little things like this?" he asked when she bought a wooden raccoon, claiming that, "It's too funny to leave it here." "Do you always take life so seriously?" she replied, laughing. Her laughter was infectious. Kevin felt like he hadn't laughed heartily in a long time and caught himself being drawn to her simplicity and warmth. It took a few more days before Kevin realized how much he had begun to look forward to their communication. Every time his phone vibrated, his heart sank in anticipation that it was Lily. And more often than not, it really was her. One day she invited him to visit, saying she wanted to show him her recent work. Lily lived in a cozy apartment with huge windows that let in soft light. On the walls hung her sketches and photos of interiors she had designed. "You're really into this," Kevin said, looking at one of her designs. "Of course I am," Lily replied. "It's my inspiration. Every time I see my work changing a space, I feel like I'm doing something meaningful." Kevin couldn't help but notice how her eyes lit up as she talked about her work. He felt like he wanted to be around someone who was so genuinely passionate about what she was doing. As he was about to leave, Lily suddenly said, "You know, Kevin, I'm glad you're letting me be around you. It means a lot." His heart beat faster. He didn't know what to say, but her words left a warm mark on his soul. Their meetings became regular. Lily didn't try to speed things up, but every moment they spent together was a step toward recovery for Kevin. Her presence was like medicine, allowing him to gradually heal from the wounds of his past. The cold morning sun was streaming through the windows of Kevin's living room. He sat on the edge of the couch, holding a mug of cold coffee. Next to him on the table were the divorce papers he had to sign. Those sheets seemed to be more than just documents. They symbolized a final line he hadn't yet decided to draw. He ran his fingers along the edge of the paper, feeling the rough surface. Divorce was inevitable, but Kevin was still struggling with inner chaos. He wanted to tell himself it was over, but a part of his soul was still trying to hold on to scraps of their shared past with Megan. The sound of the phone snapped him out of his musings. It was Lily. He answered, trying to hide the weariness in his voice. "Hi, Lily." "Hi, Kevin." Her voice sounded warm as always. "What are you doing?" He glanced down at the papers, then at the mug. "Nothing important, just morning coffee." "Then I have an idea. Why don't we go for a walk today? The park, hot chocolate. Fresh air might help you get your thoughts in order." Kevin was silent for a moment, but then nodded as if she could see him. "Okay, that sounded good." They met at the entrance to the park. Lily was standing at a wooden kiosk that sold drinks, dressed in a long coat and scarf. Her smile was genuine as it always was. In her hands she held 2 cups of hot chocolate. "You look like you need it," she said, holding out one of the cups to him. "Thank you," he replied, taking the drink. They started walking along the alley lined with fallen leaves. The frosty air burned their faces, but it was pleasant and refreshing. Lily talked about little things, a book she was reading, a new project she was working on. Kevin listened to her, feeling the tension slowly fade away. "How's that going for you?" she asked, gently alluding to the papers he had mentioned a few days ago. "Almost signed," he admitted honestly. She nodded, her gaze calm and understanding. "It's hard," Lily said, looking forward. "But sometimes we have to let go of things that don't work anymore." Kevin stopped, causing her to stop as well. "Lily," he began, looking into her eyes, "thank you for being there for me. Without you I'd probably still be in this swamp." She smiled, touching his arm warmly. You pulled yourself out, Kevin. I was just here. When they returned from the park, Kevin decided not to delay. He sat down at his desk and picked up a pen. The papers in front of him seemed cold and lifeless, but now he felt ready to sign them. With each line he filled out, the tension in his chest grew weaker. When the last signature was placed, he leaned back in his chair and exhaled. This wasn't the end. It was the beginning. Lily came to see him that evening after learning that he had signed the papers. They sat on the couch, wrapped in a plaid with glasses of wine in their hands. The light of the lamp created a cozy illumination, and the room was silent, broken only by the crackling of the candle. What now? Lily asked, looking up at him. Kevin smiled, his gaze had a calmness to it that hadn't been seen in a long time. I don't know, he admitted. But for the first time in a long time, I'm not afraid of that, I don't know. She leaned closer, her eyes glistening. Then just move forward. One step at a time. Kevin smiled, feeling her words penetrate right into his heart. In that moment he realized that the past was no longer holding him back. For the first time in a long time he felt free. And that's where today's story ends. Thank you for watching to the end. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to like and comment. We'd love to discuss this story with you. See you in the next video.